Joining me now is National Chief Cindy Woodhouse Nepinak and her father, Chief Garnet Woodhouse, former chief of Pinaymootang First Nation, and her mother, Loretta Woodhouse. Welcome to 100 Huntley Street.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
It is our honor to have you with us today. Loretta, first question would go to you. Your beautiful daughter is sitting next to you as National Chief, and I wanted to ask you what life was like growing up and what it was like to raise your daughter among four brothers, which is a very busy household. What was it like growing up for a National Chief, Cindy Woodhouse?
Well, first of all, I didn't know she was going to be a national chief, but it was a joy to have her. After four boys, we loved our boys very much. Every single one of them, when they were born, they were a blessing to us. And then when she came along, it was an extra special gift from God. So when she was growing up, she was very rambunctious. She was tough because she grew up with four boys, and the four boys made sure that they toughened her up. As she was growing up, you know, she had that nature in her where she would stand up for the less fortunate, so to speak. When she was in high school, I sent her off to another community, a short distance away, to go and have her education there, to finish off her grade 12. And there she would stand up for her people if they were being put down, so to, put down as Native people. She stood up for them, and I am so proud of her for that, and who she is now, where she came from. She came from the roots of we were not wealthy people, but we have a lot of wealth in our hearts for God. God is our sustainer, and I taught her about the Lord. I try to set a good example for her and to be respectful.
Chief Garnet Woodhouse, you were a chief for 4 decades in Pinaymootang First Nation, and you exposed Cindy to incredible moments of leadership. Was that intentional? What were you thinking as she attended events with you and really soaked in what it meant to be a community leader?
I never knew that she would be the national chief, but coming from my part, as my great grandfather signed a treaty, and it carried on within our family. As my dad was chief, and my uncle, and some of my brothers were a council, and I think it was in the blood.
When you think about the spiritual legacy for your daughter and what you want her to inherit in terms of faith and relationship with Creator, what are some of the things that come to mind?
She heard a lot about Christianity when she was growing up, and also and that's really supporting her today, because we need guidance as we do our daily things in this world. And also, this is what the teaching she gained, not to say anything or to put down anybody. Like today we're living, I still encourage her today, not to undermine other or to put down other faiths, the faith that other people have, because we all have different ways how we approach the Lord. I don't believe to put down other beliefs.
Yeah.
Because the Lord is not telling us that. He's telling us to love one another, not to put down each other.
Indeed, that message of forgiveness that we see modeled in the authentic Jesus, where he was willing to die for us and went through so much suffering at the hands of religious leaders, and yet God shows us to forgive. And when you, National Chief, when you think about the very dark history that is connected to Christian religious institutions and the idea of faith or Jesus that they shared, which was not what we see in the Gospels. It's not the Jesus we see who actually came to earth. How do you journey through as people of faith now in the authentic Jesus, but knowing how Jesus and the idea of who God is was used to harm First Nations people?
Well, it's certainly, it's hurtful, I think, for many of our residential school survivors when they think back, and many people were never brought to justice because it was people that hurt other people in using something as a weapon. And it was wrong and it was unjust. And, we continue to call for that people do be brought to justice that have hurt others in residential and day schools. And I know that they're hard conversations to have, but they're necessary. And I think that if, forgiveness can start by accepting that it happened, that this country accepts that it did happen, which I think most people do. I know there's some out there that are starting to say that that residential schools never existed. They did exist, and they hurt a lot of people. And I think the road to reconciliation is finding the truth through that and helping survivors find forgiveness and their descendants of having these hard conversations with each other and finding ways to come together in a better way. Finding ways to heal, being inclusive with each other. We're a big population in this country, and we're growing. And yes, we have a tough history with each other, even when it comes to treaties. The true treaty relationship hasn't been realized yet with each other. We have a long way to go. I know that we're working towards it. I think we've come a long way, but we have a way to go still. And we just have to continue to work together.
Yes.
Yeah.
When they talk about residential schools and what was happening there with our children, my heart goes out. Of course, my heart is for the children. And because I'm an educator as well, I see children and I care about these children. I love them. But you know what happened in them days? It was not Jesus. It was not the concept of Jesus, which people tried to label. It was God, or Jesus. It was that evil that was inside these people that did that harm to our children. It was not Jesus. It was not God. God is a holy God, and he when we allow Him to work in our lives, He does good things. He's a God of comfort, God of peace, God of healing. So that's where my healing came from. It's a beautiful life. Christian life is a beautiful life. And He's a forgiving God, and we forgive each other and we respect each other because that's what He gives us.
Yes.
And that's what my grandmother taught me.
It's very profound and it's very beautiful and true. I think about Jesus Himself being persecuted and murdered by religious leaders, and how people use religion as a tool, but it's from the evil intents of their hearts, and it is darkness behind it.
Yeah.
And it's so important to separate the two. I can see this stirring in your heart.
Yeah. No, I'm glad that I think it was a step in the right direction when the Catholic Church apologized for their wrongdoing in residential schools, and other denominations that have apologized. And I know that we have a long way to go with the churches in this country. I know that we have to acknowledge the truth to make sure that some of that denialism that is happening in this country, that we tell the truth. And I always think that if there's one thing from the church, it's to be truthful. And residential schools did happen, and residential schools hurt families, and residential schools hurt churches as well, because they're trying to, I think from First Nations and churches themselves, there's still, I think it's just starting off. It's still very raw. And I know going to Rome in 2022 was a real moment in time. It was a tough moment in time, but it was necessary.
Yeah.
And it was necessary to And of course, I know, the Pope visited Canada to give his apology. Some people accepted it, some people didn't. And it was very emotional to be around all those people in Alberta that day. Very emotional. You could feel the hurt, raw feelings, but also, some people were willing to forgive, others maybe not. And now where do we go from there?
Yes. I think speaking the truth and acknowledging the truth and pursuing true relationship and reconciliation and building together as National Chief, as you keep encouraging us to do. I'm so thankful for the authenticity of your family and for the encouragement this is for Canadians to do more work, roll up their sleeves and work together with First Nations communities. Thank you for your leadership, all of you as First Nations leaders. And National Chief, you were leading us at the National Prayer Breakfast. In a moment you came up and you asked your mom to say a prayer in Anishinaabe. How do you feel about your mom doing that right now to end our time together?
Oh, absolutely. You know what? I think it's important, especially in the decade of Indigenous languages.
Yes.
And I know that we're always pushing, and I know that this country, and I'm glad we worked on the Indigenous Languages Act through Parliament. Yeah. There's lots of languages that are sleeping now, Indigenous languages that we're sleeping. We're losing our speakers. Every week we lose speakers. And so I'd be honored if she could close us off in that way, and that we say that so that our young people across this country can hear our language.
Yes.
Once again, right? And that we start to reclaim it and revitalize it. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. What an honor. Loretta, would you lead us in the Lord's Prayer in Anishinaabe?
Okay, let's all pray. Nusnang kichigishun kaya in kakichapitan tao kingisun kigichugi mawin tatagushnumagan. Migashna kumaking tapsquet kichigishin. Mishnam sugisha perquesigan. Babunan tamashnam ni mani ninan. Kenny 90 deska babunan tamadiman. Mitagan sham chagagadini meni. Papishinam chimachiche resinin. Kintaskaya and kichugi mawin. Minomasko izin. Minok chito and daguzin. Kagigemi no kagigemi sagish navok. Amen.